In today's show, possible targets for the Trailblazers at number 14, plus some guiding principles the team can use as they head into the draft. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You are listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making the show your first listen, coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make it your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's show, I want to focus on some names I like at 14. The Blazers, of course, with 2 picks in this draft, 7 and 14, 2 first-round picks, I should say. In our most recent episode, we actually talked about Anthony Simons with and a possible trade to Orlando. But the episode prior to that, I talked about some second-round targets that I kind of starting to float around and have my eye on. But most of our first-round coverage has focused on that Blazers' first pick they have in the lottery, and I want to focus on guys who will be around at 14, some names I like, some names I'm maybe not as high on that will there's nothing definite about this draft, but some names I'm maybe not as high on that could be on the board and kind of why I feel that way and the guiding principles for sort of where the Blazers are. And I want to close the show answering some questions, the most common questions I'm getting right now from listeners, because I think they all touch on a certain theme that everyone in some way or another is feeling. Let's start with some names I like at 14. If you're an everydayer, you already know who I'm going to talk about first here. Shout out to my everydayers. I appreciate you rocking with me even in the off season and even in the downtime before we were really in draft mode and the Blazers season had ended. We were doing a Friday Tankathon spin. We're on the shows on Friday. I would go to tankathon.com. I'd press a little button and we'd simulate the draft lottery. And in all of those spins, the Warriors, depending on where we were in the season, record-wise, were at 13 and 14. And the name that I always kept kind of landing on at 13 and 14 was Tidjane Salaun. He's a 6'9" forward. He's playing for Cholet in the French league. He's not yet 19 years old. He's huge. He's like a big 6'9". I mean, I don't know his official measurements, but listed at 6'9". A big filled out 6'9". He hasn't shot super well in the French league, but he's been relatively productive for someone his age, shooting, I believe 32% at last update I saw. But he has some shooting upside. He has a really high arcing three. Cholet today in the had a big ol' upset, and he had a big game in that one. And I think Salaun right now, and including a highlight where he hit like a 35 footer. And it's like the Salaun sort of momentum is picking up within the Blazer fan base. But I just want to say that I have been he's been my guy at that range for, 6 weeks now. And I don't even know anything. I just know that he seems to be this sort of major upside swing youngster who, to be totally clear, and I've said this on show, shout out to my everydayers, like his floor is probably he's just not straight up not an NBA player, right? Like he's not an NBA player, because reportedly from the scouting reports I've read is that he's pretty far behind on feel for the game and just like overall skill level. He plays hard, he defends, he's got a giant frame, he has a shooting stroke that looks pretty good, but just like overall skill level and overall feel for playing high level basketball, he's just not quite there yet. Which means that there's a long way to go from point A where he's at to point Z, or whatever, point Q, where he's like a productive regular member of an NBA team, right? Like it's just a lot of steps away. But he's been sort of my pick there. He's been that's been the name that I have consistently thrown out. I don't claim to be a draft expert. I'm trying to develop stronger opinions for the draft just because of where the Blazers are in their sort of cycle of team building. But he's been a name that has been bandied about on this podcast many times. And he kind of fits my sort of overall thinking here, is that the Blazers should take swings. They should aim for guys with relatively with upside, because with the caveat that when you aim for guys with upside, Sometimes you strike out. So the first name I like at 14 is Tidjane Salaun. I think he's been mocked to the Blazers in a couple different drafts I've seen. He fits the sort of Joe Cronin profile. Joe Cronin is on the record like very early in his tenure. I believe it was an interview with Jason Quick of The Athletic where he said like, he prefers maybe bigger upside swings and like then his first ever pick is Shaedon Sharpe, right? Like, and that kind of fits the bill. And I think Ryan Rupert is similar, and maybe Scoot Henderson to some extent is similar too. Guys without maybe guys that aren't as sort of sure bets and are further along. Although I think Scoot was supposed to be a sure bet than he has proven to be thus far. But I think Salaun like really fits the Cronin profile. He really, really does. Will he be available 14? I don't know, but if he is, I would. As of right now, I'm recording this on the evening of May 15th. You are listening to Thursday, May 16th show. Thanks for listening. He would be my guy. Then there's like a drop down. I don't really have tiers yet. I don't even know if I'm ever going to have tiers. I don't think I have enough draft expertise for you to want me to have tiers. I'll just have opinions and you can disagree with them. I think that's the best way for this relationship to play out over the next 5 weeks. The other names on the list I like in no particular order. Yves Missi, big guy from Baylor. He measured out a little bit shorter at the combine than I had seen it. Everything I'd read was like, oh, he's a 7-footer with a 7'5" wingspan, and he measured out 6'10" and 3/4 in barefoot. So like that's 7 feet. But it's about you get 1.25 inches. I think Jonathan Givony says you get 1.25 inches on average with the shoes on. So he'll play at 7 feet, but he's not a true quote unquote 7-footer barefoot. He's under 6'11", and his wingspan is 7'2". That's probably not a game changer. He jumped 38 inches, like a 38 inch max vert. He is a raw defensive, like rim runner, defensive center. Like he can block some shots. He rolls to the rim. He probably doesn't have much offensive game to speak of other than just like sort of rim running lob threat right now. But he's big and he can move a little bit. There's the scouting reports I've read suggest he might be able to guard a little bit in space, but right now like a rim protector type of guy and like pretty far away. Yves Missi from Baylor. He's on the sort of general in pencil wish list, I think, for me right now. The next guy is Tyler Smith of the G League Ignite. Smith is, a 6'9". He's probably a 4 in the NBA, but he's like a stretchy big man who played for the G League Ignite. He actually turned pro at 16. He joined Overtime Elite, which is like that professional path option that's available based out of Atlanta, Georgia. And he played professionally at 16, like as a high school sophomore. He joined OTE, so he's played a lot of not collegiate, not high school basketball over the last few years, but he played a year with the Ignites. And when I saw him play with the Ignite, he was good. Like he shoots, he has good touch from the outside. He seems to have the physicality to play at the professional level. He's not gigantic. He's probably a 4. And probably a 4 just mean by that I mean like he was 6'9" without shoes, 7'1" wingspan, fairly long wingspan, but like he's going to be 6'10"-ish, so he's like he could be a backup 5 because of with the size, but you probably can't have he probably doesn't project as like a starting 5 just because of the overall size, and like he's probably a power forward in the league. But I like I like the shooting touch. I think he has maybe some playmaking upside. He just seems like to me he strikes me as like someone who has the skills of a modern big man and probably profiles as like a solid role player in the league with upside to be more if you sharpen because he possesses a lot of the natural skills of modern big men. Screening, shooting, passing, some shot blocking upside. It's like if you have those skills and you sharpen, 3 of the 7 necessary, whatever, 2 of your 5 tools, then then maybe you're beyond like a solid role player. He doesn't have the crazy upside. This is why he's like for me, like Missi is down this level because I think he's further away, and I think like in general his offense, I can't imagine a situation where he's like an elite offensive player by any means, right? He's like, I don't know, it's Clint Capella or something like that in the best case scenario. Tyler Smith is like, he's, I don't know, the best case scenario, something like Kevin Love, but I think that's probably too generous. Kevin Love is maybe a little too much for him, but it's like these that's like the absolute peak. But they're why like Salaun is so raw and so like the frame is there, the size is there, and the shooting could be there, that it's like that is like you're a 6'9", someone with broad shouldered, like big 6'9" forward, like that's like skilled giant people is the future of the league, right? I think Smith and Missi aren't quite there for me. And the last name before we go to the second segment is Deron Holmes. He might be a reach at 14. He might fall further than that. But I watched him play in the NCAA tournament and I was like, that's a pro. Like that guy has enough skills to be a pro. He's older because he spent time in college, and that's like the nature of it. But I think he has like modern big man skills. He measured just under 6'9" at the combine, with a 7'1" wingspan. He can do everything that a modern big does with shooting, rim, rolling to the rim, short roll decision making. He's maybe not elite at it, but he's productive in college as a 20-point per game scorer at Dayton. Like, he got bigger he was in the combine last year, and he's just filled out, and it's like a year of just getting older. He's just a bigger athlete than he was a year ago. Amazing how linear time will help a body get larger. Lord knows I know that. But like, it's, to me, again, like, I don't know that Holmes is the star, right? I don't know he's a star, but these are names I like. So those are 4 names I like at 14. There's some names that are going to be there, including a tall person who attended Purdue, that I want to talk about in the second segment, because I think I want to walk this logic of upside versus production, and upside and maybe even floor versus ceiling in a way. I want to discuss that a little bit, and that's join me in that second segment. We'll get into it. I'll share some names that I'm maybe less interested in that might be available for the Blazers at 14. First, I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by eBay Motors. I want to tell you 3 words: passion, drive, and patience. Those 3 words, there's a winning formula to get championships back to your city, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, whether that's superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your parts are guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it makes it easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. All right. So I've shared with you some names I like. I think it's Salaun, and then it's guys after him. It's not that, like, I don't feel so firmly that it's like, I think it would be like a terrible mistake to not take Salaun or to take any of these other guys on the list. I just I want to share my sort of opinions, and they're probably going to be developing opinions over the next month as I continue to do my research and talk to folks around the league who do this professionally. Like, I'm lucky enough to know some people who do this full time, and I can bounce my ideas off them and try to get a feel for them. So I told you some names that I like, but as I teased here, there's some names I don't like. And let's start with the big one, like the really big one, the giant one. I am less intrigued by Zach Edey. I think I have been pretty open about my general Edey doubt. And it's for two main reasons here. One, I think he is relatively limited in the way he scores on offense. I think he turns over his left shoulder and shoots right-handed hooks, and I think he's really freaking good at it. And I think he mashed people in college because they couldn't handle him, and he's so freaking physical. I worry that he doesn't have a ton of defensive upside in the league, and it's hard for me to be excited about a center who doesn't have a ton of defensive upside in the league. Because the thing that you do on as a center, like the main value you bring, most, the vast majority of centers who aren't like Nikola Jokic is defensively, right? Is you protect the rim. Even in the 3-point era, stopping teams from making layups remains the most valuable thing you can do. And well, I think Edie is huge, and being huge will always be helpful. I don't think he has a ton of like defensive player of the year type of upside. I think most of his upside is like that he has great touch and that he is in incredible shape, playing like 40 minutes a night in college, and he's huge. Like he's huge. He's just so freaking big. And all the measurements of the combine said, oh, he's so freaking big. And he's he's a good athlete and notably an improved athlete from what he was a year ago when he went to the combine. And it was like he was going to be a second round pick or not get drafted. He went back to school. He was the best player in college basketball again. He was incredibly productive. And then he comes back and he's like a test better. My personal bias is that I don't think he's going to be like a direct post-up guy in the league as much, and it's on the defensive end. I do not see the defensive upside that allows him to be what centers need to be in the league. If the Blazers were to draft him at 14, I'm not going to cry about it. I won't be a little baby. It's just I am less interested in him. I'm also less interested in Jacoby Walter from Baylor. He was someone who was high on my list maybe when I first started doing my draft research, but he just seems he's not big enough. Like he didn't measure big enough on the wing that under 6'5" that I feel like, oh, well, he can play small forward in the league. He didn't have as productive a year at Baylor, and maybe he turns it around and he has the tools to be a prototypical 3-and-D wing in the league. And he's like maybe a really effective 2-guard for a long time. I just don't, there's other guys and there's other wings, particularly in a wing heavy draft, that I would be more excited about. Again, if the Blazers at 14, if they go some direction at 7 and 14, they're still like in the range for a wing, or they just want to load up on wings because it's a wing driven league and they think Walter's the guy, then maybe that's the one. But for me, I would say less interested. These are all names that I think would be there at 14 and be reasonable picks. It's just like for me, I would be less, generally, broadly speaking, less excited. And the last one is Kyle Filipowski from Duke. I've seen him play a bunch because I'm a Carolina guy, and I've obviously general biases against Dukies, but I'm not stupid. Like plenty of Duke players have been very good in the pros, and I'm aware of their talents and sing them as such. It's just I don't see Filipowski as that. I do not like. I think he has a reasonable floor as a talented offensive like stretch big, because I think he has good touch. He's not a great shooter. He didn't shoot great from 3, but he has good touch and good feet inside. Like he can get on balance and get himself with good feet inside, and has good touch around the rim. And in theory, he's going to be a shooter. He hasn't really put that together, but in theory, he's going to be a shooter. The physicality was a problem for him at the college level, and the lateral quickness is what a lot of scouts think is a problem for him. If you're not strong enough or quick enough, it's not exactly super exciting, but he's big and he can shoot, and that's skills that travel in the league. Like if he puts it together as a 3-point shooter, he's going to have a long career. If he doesn't, he's going to be a guy who is like a offensive, stretchy big from off the bench for some time, which I think kind of in general, this brings me to my theory on where the Blazers are and what they should be targeting. Like I don't think there's any sure things in the draft, right? Particularly this draft. Every so often there's like guys, there's Victor Wembanyama, or like, I think, even guys who are like, well, even if it doesn't pan out, I felt this like really strongly about Brad Beal like 10 years ago or however long ago. This was like the 2012 draft, 12 years ago. It's like Brad Beal, I don't know if he's going to be starting the league, but I'm incredibly confident in his sort of floor, right? I don't have a Brad Beal in this draft where I'm like, yeah, he'll be fine, right? I think in general that it's incredibly uncertain, but because of the lack of certainty, I would lean upside over production. I would swing for guys like Yves Missi, who's like incredibly raw right now, but maybe profiles as this like elite defensive big if he puts it all together in a league that is a prioritized position for what centers do. I think like in the sort of Brad Beal vein, like I'm pretty confident that Dalton Knecht is going to be a decent pro because he's athletic profile and he can shoot. Like he's just a bucket. I'm pretty sure Duke's Jared McCain is going to be an NBA player because of the shooting touch. I think he can shoot off the dribble. I think he can shoot standstill, and I think he has enough touch attacking closeouts that he's going to be a pro. But he's small, and I'm not sure he's a point guard, and I don't know where that puts him. I don't know what his upside is because of his frame. But I'm pretty comfortable with both with Knecht and with McCain being long-term pros. I'm pretty comfortable with Reed Shepherd being a long-term pro. He's an interesting one for me. Like he doesn't fit what the Blazers need at all, but elite defensive numbers in terms of defensive playmaking, steals and blocks at his frame, really good shooting numbers, and he's a really good athlete. But if he can't handle and be a point guard, it's hard for me, and I think that's the question for him. It's hard for me to see what his upside is. So, like, what long-term upside is. And so while I think he might be a productive pro for a long time, because I think he has a lot of skills that make you a productive pro, I would kind of lean guys who are maybe more likely to flame out, the Tidjane Salauns and the Yves Missis, over guys who I think am more comfortable with them, like landing in the like solid role player range. That said, like Deron Holmes and Tyler Smith, I think are in the solid role player range, but I think I can see them, their exact skills, like exactly what they need to do, just translating, right? They're like, oh, you're kind of like a stretchy 4. Okay. Bang. You're in. Like you don't need to switch positions or level up or do all these things or kind of like break the mold to fit or whatever it might be. So I think in general, and this is just sort of my sort of general approach, or what I believe the general approach for the Blazers should be, is that they should aim for guys who are maybe, particularly because they have 2 picks, and particularly with the second pick, aim for guys that might have a lower floor but a higher ceiling. Aim for guys with a lower floor and a higher ceiling, because the higher ceiling is what you're aiming for. Because of their position, because of where they are, the higher ceiling is what matters. It's not true for every team and every stage of team building. Like some teams should aim for guys with relatively high floors because you need productive rookies because you're already a pretty good team and you don't need time to wait. The Blazers have the curse and the good fortune of patience. They're not very good and they're not going to be particularly good next year. So they can take swings on guys that are maybe a year or 3 away. That's not very fun as a fan. That's not fun. Waiting is never fun. There's a patience and anxiety of being a fan. There's a conflict between those 2 feelings that comes up. It's just like, oh, I'm going to be patient because I love this team and I love the process. And also like, oh my gosh, 60 more losses. Woof. And that's what I want to talk about in the third segment. The 2 questions I'm getting most frequently are about the Blazers kind of like settling a debt they owe to Chicago and other paths to improve the team that aren't the draft. Because there are folks, and not everyone, but there are folks that are itching for this stage of the Blazers being bad and not relevant to be over in a hurry. But let's talk about that to close the show. Join me in that third segment, won't ya? First, I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by our friends at BetterHelp. Therapy can be incredibly valuable no matter what's going on in your life. And if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. If you are dealing with like an acute traumatic event, whatever that is, talking to a neutral third party can be incredibly valuable. But if you're just dealing with the bumps and bruises of just like living your life, using the challenges of just existing in the world, talking to a neutral third party, a therapist who can help you develop the tools to be the best version of yourself, can be incredibly valuable. We're all probably dealing with stuff, with stressors, big or small, and being able to regularly talk about that with someone can be useful for you. And there are a lot of different options for therapy, but BetterHelp is one of the most convenient and one of the most inexpensive. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire, you get matched with a licensed therapist, and then you can switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Get it off your chest with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, still a pass versus point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond, and you are still listening to Locked On Blazers. So, I mentioned the sort of the balance of anxiety. My theory on this is the Blazers should go in the draft. They should aim upside over ceiling over floor, upside over production, all of these things. But I think there is a certain, this might not apply to everyone, right? Because I think some folks just, they're in it, right? You put on a Blazers jersey, they're going to watch you play 60 to 80 times a year. 60, 80 times a year, and they're going to love it, right? Like that's how it's going to go down. But I think there is a part of the fan base, and these might even include people who are watching 60, 80 times a year, who are feeling a couple ways. And I think the two questions I'm getting most commonly in my email inbox, lockedonblazerspod@gmail.com, and occasionally on YouTube, where I'll respond to maybe 1 in 150 comments. That's not really where to find me. I'm on the email is where you find me. But it's whether the Blazers should settle up the Bulls pick that they owe. The Blazers, of course, traded in the deal that brought them Larry Nance. They traded a lottery protected first round pick to the Chicago Bulls as part of a deal that rerouted Derek Jones Jr. and Lauri Markkanen. That pick has never conveyed because the Blazers have not made the playoffs since that trade. It didn't work out like they thought, and due to the incredible hubris of the front office at the time, it just doesn't convey. It's lottery protected through 2028. So the Blazers, basically, it doesn't matter. They've been missed the playoffs each 3 years. They can miss the playoffs next year. There's no reason to settle that debt. At some point they'll have to, but I think they don't have a pick swap with the Bucks that would kind of interfere with that pick until 2028. That means we got the 24 draft, the 25 draft, the 26 draft, the 27 draft. Like that's 4 drafts away. That's an eternity in the NBA. At some point they will need to settle that debt with the Bulls. If it doesn't convey in 2028, it converts to second round picks. You hope the Blazers make the playoffs before then, but I think it's a very safe bet they will not be involved in the 2025 playoffs in any way, and then we will see how good they can get in line for the 2026 playoffs. Then I think at that point, heading into that season and beyond, then you start talking about the debt owed to the Bulls, but you just ignore it until then. But the anxiety about it is like, but the Blazers can't trade future picks without conveying this. First of all, they have future picks to trade if they want to. Right now, they can trade up to 5 first-round picks. They have no reason to do that, though. They're not star hunting. They're not in the phase of doing that. But I can understand the sort of why people want to settle the debt is because they want to have all their assets available. So they can indeed. So the Blazers could somehow trade for their star. Why they would do that is just like a question for someone else. But it doesn't make. They don't need to do it. They don't need to settle the debt. But the root of those questions is I would like the Blazers to be in a cycle where they're aiming to get good, not in a cycle where they're just saying, well, we're going to keep losing. We'll have our own draft picks by virtue of losing. And then the other most common question I get is hey, aren't there other paths to get better than just the draft? It's aren't there other check out, for instance, Team X, they drafted, their 3-time MVP in the second round. No, that's the Nuggets are a silly one. But there's, hey, not every team is compiled of top 5 of magical top 5 picks, and not every, and draft picks that are drafted in the top 5 and stay with a team for 10 years and win and yada, 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 right? Because I think there is a sort of, I think the root of that question is hey, they don't have to keep losing and they don't have to suck forever and be a team that always drafts in the top 5 until they get it right. And I have bad news. I think they do kind of. I categorically reject anyone who says tanking doesn't work, but I will admit that there's a shelf life to it. If you the Blazers have drafted 3, they're going to draft 7 again. If you get 5 consecutive years of top 10 picks and you're still not anywhere avoiding another top 10 pick, it didn't work. It doesn't mean tanking doesn't work. It means it didn't work for you. It didn't work for you. But the way out of that is probably more draft picks. It is a cycle that sort of eats its own tail a little bit, because if you are bad enough to continue to be in the lottery, guess what? You're going to be back in the lottery. And the Blazers don't have a magic button they could press to be competitive in the Western Conference next year. There's nothing they could do. They could go for it and not do what they did this year and kind of punt on the last 15 or so games, actively not care about the last 20 games at all. But they were bad the first 60 games, and then there's no sort of magic button they could press. They could, if they were perfectly healthy, they still wouldn't make the playoffs. They're just the West is too talented. They would be more competitive, no doubt about it, but they wouldn't be there. So I all of this is to say that I kind of recognize the anxiety and the impatience that comes with watching a team lose this much. And again, some people are totally with it, right? They're down for the cause and they are waving that flag and they're saying, we're going to, that's like flag with two G's, and they're down. They're like, there are fans who are really trusting the process. I'm kind of in the middle, right? Like, I think this is the correct route, but I also think it stinks. Like, it's not fun. It's not fun to go into a season and think, okay, well, they're going to win 20 times. That means they're going to lose 62 times. It isn't maybe the best place to be for a team to win half their games, but it certainly is more enjoyable on any given night to say, like, they might win. like it's a coin flip to say they might win. I think that's certainly like just like a more enjoyable fan experience on in the micro, like in any given Tuesday in February. It's like, I would like to watch a game where the team I like maybe wins. It's just like a more fun fan experience. Here's kind of what I think, and I've said this before in a show, shout out to my everydayers. I don't think you owe the Blazers patience, but I think the Blazers owe themselves patience, which means this year particularly, draft for upside, keep searching, hope that Shaedon Sharpe and Scoot Henderson pop, and then you can really, if one of them is good, what a huge year this is for Shaedon Sharpe in year 3, massive year for him, and Scoot just like a big sophomore season is crucial for him beating the narrative and also just like playing better. But you have to trust the process because you as a fan don't owe the Blazers patience, but the franchise itself owes itself patience to see out the plan. If this plan is a multi-year end up in the mud and then climb out the mud because you get draft picks right, you have to stay in the mud. You do not, short-circuiting a rebuild is the stupidest thing you can do. And it's often the path that leads you back to rebuild 2.0, rebuild 3.0, and it's just like, oh, we're doing it again. There's no guarantee that you build a championship level team by this process. But for teams in the Blazers situation where they're not going to sign free agents at any point, they're not going to sign star free agents at any point, the way that they get good is to draft stars and then make really effective trades. And the way you make effective trades is that you have good assets, and that's draft picks and that's good young players. The way that you collect those is either by being bad and having your own draft picks to trade, or getting good, having talented players in your team and trading them for the right assets. This is you don't owe the Blazers patience. You can check out and be frustrated with them at any means. They owe themselves patience. And I think that's like at the root of settling the Bulls pick. No, there's no reason to do it now. And that's hey, aren't there other paths to being good? There are, but the Blazers have to have a foundation first of, okay, this is the like surefire building block that like we think can be, if nothing else, a fringe all-star for an extended period of time. Like even like a Lowry Markkanen level player, right? Where you're like, okay, this dude is going to make 4 all-star teams in the next 6 seasons, and we can build from there as a stepping stone. They have to get to at least that level. If they don't, then the sort of like astute trading and all of those other things that you can, like maneuverability and signing like really solid role players to complement the core, those steps don't matter as much. They don't matter as much without the foundation, because what are you complementing without a foundation? What are you trading for without a foundation? The Blazers need to find a direction, which is going to require some patience, and then they can take the other steps. Then they can settle their debts. Then they can go the other routes that aren't just drafting and aren't just losing on purpose to draft. It's probably going to be pretty bumpy, but I think if you aim upside over production, if you allow yourself patience over getting anxious and being impatient, you can get there. It's just, it's like, how long are they going to be in the woods? I don't know. But I think you owe them, you don't owe them anything, excuse me. I think they owe themselves, at least at a very minimum, 13 months, which would mean the draft next year. Then if you don't feel like they're any further along, then you can start yelling for heads to roll. I mean, maybe heads to roll before then, quite frankly, but like, I think, and you can yell whenever, to be clear, you can fan how you want, but I think the process has to be, the Blazers owe themselves enough to trust their process and trust their scouting and trust their draft ability to draft players that can be productive and develop players that can be productive. And if they can't, and we're talking 4 consecutive years drafting in the top 10 and all of the ping pong luck that comes with it, and you don't feel like they're any further along, then it starts time to say, okay, then it's like, okay, well, time to relaunch, time to unplug it and plug it back in, blow on the cartridge a little bit and see if it works a second time. But I really do think at a minimum, you're talking 13 more months at a minimum, which is maybe hard to stomach, but it's also the truth. And I think some of your fellow fans out there are down for the cause, baby. So find some folks that are down for the cause and maybe see if you can join them on the fun. Okay, tomorrow's show, you're not going to want to miss it. Jackson Gatlin of Locked On Rockets is going to join the program for a crossover episode where he has a pitch for the Blazers to trade up in the draft and also send Malcolm Brogdon to Houston. It's more trade talk, fake trade talk on the show. Don't miss it. A crossover episode that will be in your feeds on Friday. Come back for that one. It's what we do 5 days a week, wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.